Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We have a Powerledger video for you guys today, POWR on the exchange. A request from the comments in yesterday's IOTA video to do a bit of a catch up on Powerledger. It's been a while actually since I've covered Powerledger. I don't even remember the last time. But of course, I don't really count the last few months because of the craziness here at home. But that being said, I do apologise for the lack of videos around that. Look at that, 5 months ago, can you believe that? We talked about hydrogen. I remember it well. Hydrogen is very exciting to me. I do invest quite a bit in hydrogen stocks. If anyone's interested, I may do maybe a sub channel or something that could help towards some of the other initiatives that I'm interested in, technological wise and energy, healthcare, etc. But that aside, today's topic is indeed Powerledger, and I'm going to be focusing particularly on this recent news of Powerledger and the Energie Steiermark. I think it's Austrian, yes. It's launched the first kind of its kind blockchain-enabled energy trading solution across Austria. Now, we'll talk a bit about Energie in a second, and also just a recap of Powerledger for those that are new to the channel or new to the project. And on that momentous topic, you might hear the seagulls in the background. Apologies, I live on the coast. Can't do much about it other than closing the window, but it's too warm. Please do smash that subscribe button and make sure you hit that like button as well if you are enjoying the content. Welcome aboard if you are new to the channel. So let's talk about this really briefly. First and foremost, I guess for those that are new to Powerledger or haven't heard of it before, an Australian company. We've actually done a AMA in the past with Gemma Green there. Absolutely fantastic, person to have had on the channel a couple of times now, actually, with numerous updates. And these guys are very much, of course, very heavily related into the blockchain space, or utilizing at least blockchain-based software to be used in the energy sector. Now, we've covered so many times on this channel about the concept of what blockchain could be used towards the energy market. In particular, when we're looking at things like the electrical vehicle grid that's ongoing and going to be progressing over the years to come. Of course, renewable energy, and in particular with renewables, is the renewable energy certifications and the trading of those, the verification, the processing. How much value does that have to the economy in terms of lying potentially to consumers or end users, or not being transparent enough, can now lead to some significant fines towards these companies. And for us as users, we're fed up with bills, right? And we want to know the transparency of these wholesale markets where carbon trading is occurring, or carbon credits, that we are not being fudged along the way with rates, etc. on top of that. So it's going to be quite challenging, I think, this sector moving forward, because ultimately as consumers, we want to know more. The companies provide information suggesting that, in my instance, I'm with E.ON, and they suggest 100% sustainability sources, and I'm like, well, why are our bills going up still? There's the argument that, well, the infrastructure is being built, it costs money, we're passing it on to the consumer, blah blah blah. So there's a really interesting move going on in the energy sector where we can become, instead of consumers, we can become prosumers. That means that we can have an opportunity, potentially, hopefully, to use that peer-to-peer trading element within blockchain. That means, and it sounds crazy, but it's totally pretty much what's being done in the world right now, minus the blockchain ability and the AI advancements. Go and check out the previous video we did with Dr. Vijak in relation to AI and Powerledger and energy sector in general with blockchain. It's absolutely fascinating to give a bit more of a steer on that. But to that point, as being a prosumer, it means that we could be very much more sustainable. It means that if I have wastage energy, I could put that back onto the grid to other users around the world and get paid for that, but not me going, oh, you need this energy, I'm going to charge you 5-10 times the amount of the standard rate. It will all be transparent, it will be fair. And that really opens up the doors as well to third world countries out there, or perhaps remote areas where if you've got an internet connection now, you can essentially be involved in the blockchain evolution, industrial revolution. So it's quite interesting. But from a prosumer perspective, as I said, this is where like the individual or even an entity, actually, to be honest, both have that opportunity for the production and the consuming of energy, but also in the context of energy, a prosumer can also generate their own energy, whether it's through battery, solar power, for example, wind. I mean, I don't know how many people have wind turbines on top of the house. I think it's a bit crazy, but solar is of course one of those things that has developed quite significantly. It's become a lot cheaper, still relatively expensive in the grand scheme of things, but it's becoming cheaper, and for you to be able to sell that excess production back to the grid. Now, when we come to the topic of this, of energy, I've just translated this, by the way, to English from Austrian, so apologies if some of the words are a bit out there, but you can see very much taking part in what you would expect from an energy company, the typical electrical aspects, natural gas. I don't know if they've got any articles here about hydrogen in particular, but for sure, gas has been a form of energy that we've been using for a long time, and it is evolving for sure. I think hydrogen is definitely on there. Ammonia is another area of interest, all of those kind of things as well. So we go back to this topic here. The energy software company Powerledger and one of Austria's leading energy providers, Energie, collaborated to launch a new energy trading platform called Smart Community, which allows users to control the distribution of energy generated from their solar assets. So exactly what we just talked about a minute ago. For those that aren't aware of Energie, I wasn't too massively familiar. I've known bits and pieces about them in the past, but of course Austrian based, and they're very much committed, of course, like most energy companies these days, or perceived to be, committed to that sustainable, renewable energy source narrative, but also kind of providing those solutions as well, platforms, the trading aspect of it, to try and help reduce those carbon emissions. Whether we believe in climate change or not, it's still good practice to try at least to be as sustainable as we can, and as morally, principally, that we can as well, towards our environment and people around us, and what we do and don't do as well in this arena. So it's very much trying to pull in that local community emphasis and that regional aspect as well. And we've talked about this in videos prior to this video in particular, about that local community drive. And this is going to be something that changes over these years to come. The Agenda 30 program was quite specific in the sustainability aspect of creating these like 15-minute cities, and in part of that incorporates also that ability to create this community aspect of energy consumption, and being able to almost kind of take that excess energy that communities have, whether it's your residential street or maybe even a council here in the UK. I don't know what they call them over in the US and other countries, but councils could potentially have that kind of I kind of think of it as like when you have a server and you sometimes go and do your speed checks and you're like, why is the server so far away from my house? Well, that's usually a main server. You can imagine that being a similar principle to this as well. So I'm sure, no doubt, that of course this is trying to be decentralized, that there will be a lot of centralized aspects to it, and no doubt probably the councils and government will try and take as much control of this as possible so that we don't make as much money as we possibly could. Bit of skepticism there in my voice, as you can hear and see, but that point being is that the evolution of how we develop, produce, consume, and hopefully prosume energy has become really interesting as time goes by. So this peer-to-peer trading is pretty much what I'm talking about, or have done an overview over the last sort of 5-10 minutes. But there's loads of other things in the background to this, like the documentation aspect, the transparency of documentation, the credit trading itself needs to be heavily regulated. And we covered in previous videos the development, particularly of like the EU and the UK acts towards peer-to-peer trading. This is in development still. It's not kind of fully come out yet, but I'm pretty confident to suggest that by 2030 this will all be in play. and it's part of the Agenda 30 sustainability program from the United Nations. You can read it for yourselves in fine detail, and you'll see a lot of terminologies around like the ESGs, the environmental, social goals and sustainability goals, etc., kind of taking the advancement of CSR from 10-15 years ago, corporate social responsibility, of which I've had numerous times in my career to have to deal with and create those kind of packages of information to your customers and clients to show that you are sustainable, you're regulated with ISO compliance, etc. It's not a quick and easy job, and ESG is a lot more complicated, in my opinion, a lot more complex. So companies like Powerledger and Energie coming together will hopefully demonstrate the need or requirement for this to accelerate further and become that ultimate kind of solution educator to consumers like us, but also at business level as well. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of companies are getting flack for ESG discrepancies in regards to reporting their emissions and their carbon credit or carbon footprint, and getting fined a lot of money. Deutsche Bank, I think, is like a lot of money, in the millions upon millions of fines. I don't know where that money goes, who knows, but we've talked about, in terms of energy trading aspect, the kind of key pillars there, the tokenization of energy. So let's take that concept of carbon credits that we've had for however many decades now or years. Tokenization of that makes it formidable in the blockchain space. And we can also use AI a lot, as I mentioned earlier, to inform people about the algorithms of data, where we can do those surges of energy consumption from the grids to try and reduce that a lot, to ensure fairness of distribution of energy and things like this. So it's really interesting. The smart contract aspect, where we talked about the documentation more so really, but the smart contracts can also help with the automation of these transactions, so it makes it a lot faster. And kind of the last videos that I've done, I've talked about the transactions per second. That becomes really beneficial in that area, because you're talking about transfers of action. I've said this so many times. Go and check out the IOTA video that I did yesterday on drones and things. This is exactly my point. Can you imagine all the different sectors, industries, business, action transfers that can be done? Energy is no different, and that's happening like simultaneously every second around the world all the time. Energy is constantly needed and absorbed, right? So then we have the opportunity for the decentralized market space, which is pretty much where these two companies are coming together to try and construct almost a case study, really. Yes, this is a defined partnership and a strategy and a solution, but it's also can definitely be used as a case study moving forward to really represent how peer-to-peer trading can really work. That grid management perspective, utilizing AI and blockchain, can work as well, and bring that collective, whether you believe in the 15-minute cities or not. I mean, they're coming. What I mean is, whether you believe in them in the sense that they're a good idea or not, they're going to be initiated. They already pretty much have in most cases here in the UK. We're talking about UOEZ already. That's just building blocks for what's to come. But from the energy perspective, that microgrid and like community arena is really dominant in the conversations and the project overall of Agenda 30. So when we're looking from an investor's perspective, I'm really excited about Powerledger because of its solutions, its ability in the blockchain space. I'm excited about the partnerships it's building, but also excited about the industry itself. When you are investing, doesn't matter what crypto asset it is, I'm always interested in utility and real world asset approach. I'm not interested in meme coins. I know people have success and find them funny. I don't. I think some of them are a bit of a waste of time, albeit can be used very well for branding and things like that, of course. But my prominent investment perspective, because like yourselves, I work hard. I don't want to waste my money, and I want to assess that risk as well when I'm investing as to where I'm putting it. And I know the energy sector. If you don't know the energy sector, go and learn it. We use Google for everything, right? Or search engines. We use everything and anything for gaming, whatever it might be. Why not assert some of that time to research into how I can turn my money, not obviously only just into profit, but take advantage of a swing in a revolution of an industry? I think it's a phenomenal opportunity. So that's a bit of a kind of an overview of this, guys. Go and check out Energie as well. It's always important when we're looking at the industry, look at these kind of partnerships. Okay, start matching up how it can really work. Oh, I understand Powerledger. Now I understand how Energie works, and now I can understand how this all can intertwine, and we'll see more and more of these kind of partnerships. So I think this is super exciting. And on that point, really, about the price of IOTA as an investor, it's probably a good opportunity for us to jump into the price point of POWR, the POWR token. So at the moment, currently floating around 20 cents. So you can just draw up here quickly. If you remember in the previous video, or if you're new to the channel, you obviously may not have seen it yet. I did draw in this area. The lower region around 17 cents. Ironically, we've just recently come back to that. The reason I drew that in is not just because it's a magical random thing here. I was taking some of the principles of how many strategic points we had in the data of Powerledger in the past. And what I mean by that is to have proper support for us to really push upwards, we need to confirm certain levels of price support. And that area in particular I took out was mainly in the fact that if you look across the board, we haven't really confirmed this area of support. We dropped down a lot over this kind of 2022 into 2023 period. As we got towards the end of 23, we started rising. And this is one of the few assets that doesn't abide by some of the rules of other assets in the sense that a continuous downward trend. It has had that good momentum. Many assets did, of course. But what I mean by this is the sector and the industry that it plays in can sometimes outweigh the overall cycle or traditional cycle of a crypto market. So it's almost on its own to an extent. I'm packaging that with some other assets that of similar quality of that kind of theory, but the principle being is that we kind of recognized here collectively that these areas are of interest. We had these higher grounds where we had some potential bounce back. Why here? Because when we had this upward trend and even these areas here, there's only like 3 or 4 critical points to prove that is a supported area. Then it dropped through. Lo and behold, we're playing down this area for a couple of years or just under 2 years. And then we had the uprise again with some triggered downward mentality that's kicked in over the last few months, putting us back into that trend line approach, okay? Which is why I've left a couple of fib levels here, I think. I'm just going to pull this one across, trying to keep it in line. So you can see here we broke those barriers and they all touched along those kind of critical areas. I'm just going to pull this one across because it's a bit more of a micro level, because then we can start determining where's our next moves. And this is not financial advice at all, but it's my opinion and what I'm doing as an investor. So I've already had these trigger buy points back here. Great news that they came in. Sometimes you have to be so patient. Sometimes you're sitting there emotional and going, oh, maybe I'll adjust these. And that is definitely a good strategy of DCAing, dollar cost averaging, at taking positions at various areas. But for me personally, because I hadn't really accumulated Powerledger much, I was just taking the hit and going, do you know what? If it comes down to this level, fantastic, I'm going to grab it. If it doesn't, no worries. I'll just try and accumulate at these areas. You never know where the full bottom is or the full high is. So you just have to take those strategic positions and measure the risk aspect to it as well. So ironically with this one, we actually came back to around 15 cents. So actually a couple of cents below my buy order or the one that I got. I'm still happy with that because in the grand scheme of things, we've got a long way to go from the previous all-time high. I think was at $1.33. So playing around between this 10 and 20 cents isn't massive ordeal to me. I just want to try and accumulate obviously as much as I can with as little capital as possible. I'm not trading Powerledger. I'm purely accumulating and just waiting for that above the dollar mark. May take some positions on the way through for sure as a DCA kind of strategy. But in my head, I know that, or believe personally, that we could easily try and get towards that kind of $2.32 mark and maybe even beyond in the next bull cycles. In fact, the long-term fib is potentially projecting around $4. Now that would be fantastic, wouldn't it? From the current positions that we see here. So looking at these macro lines, we can start anticipating, okay, cool, we're playing on this area. There's a chance that we might break back down again to that 15 cent mark. The next track down is 12.9 and below that is around just above the 11 cent. Now we haven't seen those two particular markers since roughly around December 2022. And even prior to that, back here in 2021, pretty sure that's probably around the middle of the year. Yes. So there is definitely opportunity for that to happen. It could argue to our point earlier that we have limited data points at even this level down here, guys, for 11, 12 cents. So there's no reason why it couldn't. Just even if it's a overnight kind of switch down because of market crash or whatever, or it might be a procedure that happens over the next month or two. I do think and anticipate that the markets will start flying up towards that September, October, November time after the elections and things, the interest rates, etc. So this could be a good opportunity in this next month or so to really monitor some of these assets, perhaps assets that you haven't had the opportunity to accumulate yet, or have been excited or waiting for that opportunity. So there's some good DCA options around these current prices of 20, still waiting around for that sort of 17 and 15 again. But these are definitely areas that I might be putting some extra buy opportunities in for these few weeks to come, and maybe in the next month or two. As I said, if they don't come in, the important thing is that we're DCAing as much as we can around these areas, so that when we do go up to the flip side in the upward trajectory, we're in a happy place, right? So they're my thoughts and feelings on it. The RSI's bottom left here is showing 14 days at 41, 28 days at 39. So again, a good bite point as a DCA opportunity. And it's suggesting that there's not too much traction downwards that could really occur in this moment in time. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but at least from that risk element, we have at least assessed it and thought about it. So guys, they're my thoughts and feelings about Powerledger. A bit of an update on the partnership there with Energie. Let us know what you think in the comments below. If energy sector is not on your radar, I suggest it should be. It's going to be a critical next few years as we lead up to those 2030 goals. But on top of that, to really understand how blockchain and energy sector can really harness each other. And do check out the previous videos. I'll try and leave an AMA link at the end, so you can at least look at the AI one and also the AMA introduction with Jenna as well. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next Powerledger update video. Take care. Bye-bye.